Welcome, everybody. We're so glad that you could join us. We will go ahead and get started at 10 a.m., but just wanted to go ahead and welcome you. Thank you for being with us today.
While you are joining us, well, we'd like you to go ahead and take a poll to kind of let us know who's in the audience today. So go ahead and launch that poll. Please take that poll as you come in to the webinar today. Thank you.
It's wonderful to see. We have 41% district administrators so far, 3% campus administrators, just jumped to 4%, school counselors, 15%, teacher academic coaches, learning specialists, 1%, social worker, case manager, 9%, and the ESC liaison staff, 7%. So those of you that are just joining us, please go ahead and fill out the poll. Let us know who you are. It's awesome to see such a diversity of education professionals in the room with us today. My name is Kelly Kravitz, and I am the director of our Highly Mobile and At-Risk Student Programs Division. We are thrilled that you are with us today. We are going to be discussing commissioner rules to support school transitions for students who are experiencing homelessness or in substitute care. This is part one. So this is a part one and a part two training. And so we are excited that you're here with us, and we're going to go ahead and get started.
All right, so we'll end the poll real quick and just then quickly share that. All right, so 42% district administrators, 3% campus administrators, 14% school counselors. Great to see that. 1% teachers, 10% social workers, case managers, 7% ESC liaison staff, 8% campus support staff. We have some other agency staff here, some other state agency staff, and then other student support role, 13%. So thank you, and I'll turn it back over to Kelly.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Bowser. So just a little bit about who we are. We are in the Office of Special Populations and Monitoring, and we equip school systems to increase awareness, to promote equitable access, and improve outcomes for all of our special populations. So I'm joined today with my incredible team. We are honored to serve you. Like I said, my name is Kelly, and I've had the honor of working at TEA for over 11 years. And actually seeing a lot of initiatives for highly mobile and at-risk students be created, and had the awesome opportunity to establish new programs and new services and resources at the agency over the last 11 years for our most highly mobile and at-risk students. So it's an honor just to be with you here today and go over this new rule and this rule update. And I think that you guys are going to be really pleased with some of the changes that we've made and are excited to see this information implemented within Texas schools. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Bowser for him to introduce himself and tell you a little bit more about himself.
Thank you so much. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. We'll make sure Ms. Kravitz gets the screen, the presentation shared, so you can see that. Right now, it's not being shared. But I'm Dr. Jimmy Bowser. Been in schools or in education for about 25, I think, or 26 years now. So I've been a principal, teacher, assistant principal, done the whole thing, district level executive, been the whole gamut. But glad to be here with you guys today. So excited to see we've got about 1,200 signed up for today's webinar. So glad to be with you today. I'll turn it over to Jordan Brown.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jordan Brown. I am the program specialist for the Texas Education for Homeless Children and Youth program. I have been with TEA for about 3.5 years now, and I've worked in special populations, overseeing multiple different programs, and I'm happy to have been with the Touchy program for this month was a year now, so my 1-year anniversary with the Touchy program. I will turn it over to Dr. Watson.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Latrenda Watson. I am the Highly Mobile At-Risk State Coordinator, which I oversee the foster care and student success programs and also the pregnancy-related service programs and any at-risk services. So also I previously before TEA, I was the council facilitator for district-wide. I am a professional school counselor. So, and I was the foster care point of contact for the district. So I understand this role, and I am so happy that everyone is here today. And thank you, and hope you learn a lot with this presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Watson and team. We have just incredible leadership and for a variety of roles and diversity of perspectives. And we will be bringing that to light today in the presentation. And just look forward to equipping you and supporting you as you work to implement this policy within your local schools and communities. So this, as I mentioned, is a webinar series. So today, or a part one, and with a part one and a part two. So today we're going to be going over a high-level overview of the rule. We're going to be talking about some of the definition updates. We're going to be going over a transfer of student records and transcripts section. We're going to be talking about the development of systems to ease transitions and establish procedures to lessen the adverse movement of impact on a student. We're going to be talking about provisions of special education, as well as notice to the student's educational decision maker and caseworker. So that's what we'll be covering today in part one. And then we have part two, which is going to be on April 5th. So we'll be providing an overview. We'll be going over the evaluation of student records for students who are homeless or in substitute care. We will be going over placement educational programs and courses. We will also be discussing promotion of access to educational and extracurricular programs, summer programs, credit transfer services, and after-school tutoring programs, as well as the promotion of post-secondary information. So what we're going to be doing in both of these trainings is providing you an overview of the rule updates, discussing strategies to support implementation, and the tools that we have available to support you with implementing these rules to mitigate barriers to school transitions. So we really want you to come away from today's training with a solid understanding of what the changes are, as well as the tools and resources that are available to support you with implementation. And so we'll be walking you through today. Here on the slide is a quick outline of today's agenda that I just went over, and each team member will be walking you through different sections of the rule. Also, as a bit of just technical support and engagement, a little bit of housekeeping, please submit any questions that you have in the Q&A. And we do have intermittently time throughout with each section where we want to answer your questions. So we will be doing our best to answer what's in the Q&A. This presentation will be recorded and available on our website. It will likely take us a couple weeks to get it posted, but it will be there. And then we are unable to make this PowerPoint available in advance. And I know that's something that we get requests. And so just wanted to share, we apologize for that, but we'll have the information posted, and do encourage you to share this recording with colleagues and people that need this information. And then continuing professional education, CPEs, will be available for participating in today's training. Okay. So before we dive in, I wanted to provide a little bit of background. So this is an amended version of this policy that we're going to be going over. This is specifically 19, the Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 89, Adaptions for Special Populations. This is Subchapter FF, Commissioner Rules Concerning Transition Assistance for Highly Mobile Students who are homeless or in substitute care. And these new adopted rules assist with the transition of students who are homeless or in substitute care from one school to another. and provide LEAs with guidance on the requirements of the education code. And so this is built off of the Texas Education Code 25007, which requires the agency to provide policy guidance requirements around mitigating barriers to school transitions. And there's actually quite a bit in 25007. And so this rule initially was effective at the start of the pandemic, March 30th in 2020. We worked actually really looking at mobile students broadly. We looked at research nationally. We looked at all mobile students from our migrant students to military connected students, and really gleaned wisdom concerning serving mobile students broadly across the state, and really poured all of that. So it's research and what were good practices happening around the state into this policy that became effective March 30th, 2020. Obviously, that was a really challenging time for our entire world and our schools. And so this rule likely didn't get the visibility that it needed. And so just really excited for you again to be with us today and continuing to move forward with implementing this. This is something that takes a village to implement, not just one person in your district. And so again, there's a lot of different parts and different components and people that are involved, and we encourage you to share the information. The amendment to the policy became effective January 1st, 2023. And this amendment really reflects the feedback that we received from you all over the last few years since this has been implemented. There were a number of opportunities for cleanup and a number of opportunities for strengthening. And so we really, again, we poured a lot into the development of this initial policy. It's very, very solid. It's very, very progressive and really leading the country in how we serve mobile students. And then we built on that really strong foundation in this amendment, worked really hard with the team for over a year. And then this policy did become effective on January 1st. So everything that we're discussing today is effective. It is in the policy. It is the expectation and the requirement for Texas schools to implement. As with all trainings, you may hear things today that you didn't know, things that you're not doing. And so we just really encourage you to use today as a mirror to reflect on what is it that we're doing and where is it we can improve and who needs to know about this information, and for then you to take steps to work to implement and make improvements. So we approach today with a growth mindset, really thankful that you're here with us today. And we really want to give you the foundation so that you can take what you need and be able to implement within your respective communities. At a very high level, I want to walk you through what the updates are on this policy at again, a broad high level, a little bit of an elevator pitch. So one, we've enhanced the enrollment conference definition. We created alignment. We had a definition, and then we had a section of the policy that talked about enrollment conferences. And there were some discrepancies there. And so we really have worked to tighten all of that language up and to really align and clarify the enrollment conference. The award of credit section actually is significantly updated, and it's been renamed to the evaluation of student records. So we worked really hard with our curriculum division. We're actually going to have Jessica Snyder, who is a leader in that division, come and really walk us through the evaluation of student records. These changes that have been made really bring this policy in alignment with curriculum standards and guidance, and really, I think, spell out a lot of opportunities within state law and state policy to serve our mobile students well. And you're going to see that reflected in that section of the rule. We will be discussing that in part 2. We also expanded promotion of access to educational and extracurricular programs, the title and section to align with the education code requirements. So there's actually quite a bit there beyond educational and extracurricular programs. And so we've added that, and that was actually in the law, but was missing from our policy. And so we've gone ahead and added that. It includes summer programs, it includes credit transfer services, electronic courses, and after school tutoring programs. So you'll see that reflected in our policy. We've strengthened the promotion of post-secondary information. So you'll see that reflected, restructured that section. And then we did remove homeless from students' notice to students' educational decision maker and caseworker, because that requirement is only for students in foster care that have a designated educational decision maker. And so it went ahead and cleaned up that section. So again, this is a broad stroke, broad policy, but see, these are some of the updates that we'll be walking through in both the part 1 and part 2 presentations. And so as we get started, I wanted to walk you through some of the definition changes and updates. So at a very high level, we've added to our definitions at the top of the policy. And so you'll see that here. We've added caseworker, educational and course programs, enrollment conference, we've amended, we've tweaked, we changed language from homeless liaison to McKinney-Vento liaison, and we also added a definition for what the welcome packet is. So what you're going to see throughout today's training and part 2 as well is we're going to walk you through what the policy says. We're going to highlight for you changes, and you're going to see those reflected in blue, underlined, and italicized text. And then we're going to provide you a summary of what the changes are that we've discussed, as well as some reminders for implementation. And then, as I mentioned, we're going to highlight any tools. So you're going to see that reflected throughout with each team member presenting today. So with that, we wanted to go ahead and get started with definition updates. So as I mentioned, we added caseworker. So you're going to see that reflected, a person who works on behalf of a student in the Texas DFPS managing conservatorship to make decisions regarding the student's case, clarified who that role is. Secondly, we've added educational and course programs. This is programs intended to provide instruction to students in conjunction with or outside of the required curriculum, which may include, but are not limited to, gifted and talented services, bilingual or special language services for emergent bilingual students, career and technical education, and early college, high school. So I went ahead and defined that. Enrollment conference, I've mentioned that this was amended, so I wanted to note, highlight these changes for you. I'm going to go ahead and just read it. A student-centered meeting between key school district or open enrollment charter school staff and the newly enrolled student and or the student's parent or guardian that occurs within the first 2 weeks of enrollment or as soon as feasible at a new school to collaboratively ease transitions, identify the student's academic strengths and extracurricular interests, introduce school processes and opportunities for engagement, and identify any interventions and additional support services. For example, this could be special education or Section 504 services, academic, behavioral interventions, social and emotional needs, college and career readiness. Those are all examples of different program areas that could be discussed in the enrollment conference. And then we've added the student's attendance in the conference should be addressed on a case-by-case basis. And so a couple of things that I wanted to note here is that we have expanded the time frame. We did hear from different parts of the state that the 2 weeks was very, very difficult and challenging to conduct enrollment conferences for new students within that time. And so with that being the intention of the law, the policy mitigating barriers, we want to meet students quickly. We want to have these enrollment conferences, but we have added language as soon as feasible, recognizing that it may not be able to happen within the 2 weeks. So we want to push for that happening quickly, not delaying in any way getting that enrollment conference, but we have added language to make it permissible for it to go beyond 2 weeks. We've also within this clarified that the student's attendance in the conference should be addressed on a case-by-case basis. And we did have this in our tool and we shared it in guidance, but we went ahead and clarified that and added it to the definition. We also, again, just strengthened around what are the expectations of this enrollment conference and clarifying that this is for newly enrolled students. So this is not something from year to year. It truly is to meet the needs of a newly enrolled student and ensuring that everybody is working together. Something that also is in our guidance regarding this is that this is just not another meeting to meet. If you have another meeting that's occurring, that it's completely fine for that meeting to be the meeting where these things are discussed. So we just want you to work smart in that and leverage opportunities that you have. And in our enrollment conference section later in the presentation, Dr. Watson will talk more about that, but did want to take a moment to highlight the definition for you. As I mentioned, McKinney-Vento liaison, we didn't change the definition at all. We just changed the title. So we removed the word homeless and added McKinney-Vento. And then as I mentioned, we added welcome packet. And folks are like, what is a welcome packet exactly? So we had a toolkit and we had a description of it in the policy, but we went ahead and added that to the definitions. And so a welcome packet is a compilation of school district or open enrollment charter school and community resources that are provided to new students within the first 2 weeks of enrollment at a new school that helps to familiarize the student with the school. So in summary, we've added caseworker, we've added educational and course programs, we've added welcome packet, we've adjusted the enrollment conference definition language, as well as changed homeless liaison to McKinney-Vento liaison. With that, is there any questions regarding the definitions?
Yes, we have a few in the Q&A.
Okay.
Two of them are asking pretty much the same thing, but it's so when you're talking about the enrollment conference, is that newly enrolled to the school system or into the program itself, whether it be foster care or homeless?
That's a great question. I'm new to the school. And so yeah, it's really when that new student enrolls for the start or the beginning of the year. And I guess something I will say on that, it's like if a student does come into foster care, let's say, and it's the middle of the school year, you know, it's not technically, they're not newly enrolled. Maybe they've been in that school, but now they're in foster care. So this is where there's a little bit of a gray area, and going, being proactive, making sure the student is receiving supports, the concepts of the enrollment conference, and that those items have been discussed, but it is not a requirement, but would be a best practice in that situation. Okay, in this next section, we're going to talk about transfer of student records and transcripts. And something that I wanted to note here is that there's really no significant substantive changes to the section. It has simply been reordered. And what is the expectation here in this policy is the expectation for all students. And so I'm going to walk through this policy, just outline what it is. This should not be new. This should be what you're already doing. But again, wanted to just review it with you as a reminder. And then again, the changes that we've made, some of it's just with restructuring and realigning. And so you're going to see that language highlighted in italics, underlined, and in blue. So here, school districts and open enrollment charter schools shall ensure that student records for students who are identified as homeless or in substitute care are transferred to the student's new school after receiving a request for records. That is the expectation. Student records must be requested, sent, and received using the Texas Records Exchange System, or what we call TREX. Again, this is the expectation for all students. School districts and open enrollment charter schools are required to transfer student records within 10 working days of a receipt of a request from a district or charter school to which the student who is homeless or in substitute care enrolls. And then something that we wanted to highlight here, and this was already in the policy, but I think it's always a good reminder, is that the discretionary authority to withhold records of a student if the student has not returned or paid for instructional materials or technological equipment does not exempt a district or a charter school from the mandatory provision to send records to another public school in which the student enrolls. And so we do know that this comes up from time to time for our students. Potentially there's instructional materials that the student has and they've been checked out, but that cannot be withheld. And so those students, in those instances, their records cannot be withheld and need to be sent to another school when that child enrolls into another school. Again, this is not new policy, but just again, restructured and reordered this. If a school district or an open enrollment charter school fails to receive the required information within 10 working days, the requesting district or charter school may report the non-compliant district or charter school to the division responsible for TREX support at TEA. So you can reach out if that has not happened. And then proof of enrollment in a different school district or an open enrollment charter school permits retroactive withdrawal to the date a student enrolled in the new school. The date of enrollment in the new district or charter school is considered the date of withdrawal from the previous district or charter school. Okay, so at a very high level here, we adjusted the policy language to align with existing T-Rex guidance and policy. Just this section was a cleanup. No substantive changes, reordered the content from the previous version of the rule. And you will see that we changed each school district to just school districts, and we did that throughout this section of the policy. So with some reminders for implementation here, we just want to encourage you that DFPS, school foster care liaisons, McKinney-Vento liaisons, and school registers must work together to ensure records are properly transferred when school moves occur. So we have these liaison positions that one of their key duties is supporting the transitions of students and the transitions of their school records and their information, and communicating between the sending and the receiving schools for our mobile students. And so we really want to encourage that collaboration, that folks are working together. I think also this rule presents an opportunity to talk to those different folks that you are working with and need to work with within your community, and to examine the systems that you have, the communication channels, and those processes. When requesting records, the requester must be clear that all records must be sent, including those held by other schools, records clerks, or storage systems. Special education records are often stored separately from the enrollment records. And so really being clear on what records you need and ensuring that it's all records that are shared and communicated. LEAs, as we discussed, may not withhold records of McKinney-Vento eligible and foster care students for not returning or not paying for instructional materials or technological equipment. And LEAs are not exempt from sending records. And then again, proof of enrollment in a different campus or a district permits retroactive withdrawal to the date a student enrolled in the new school. So those are some reminders. And with that, I wanted to turn it over to Dr. Bowser just to provide some real life context for this information.
Thank you, Ms. Kravitz. I appreciate it. You know, this part is really important because we do want to make sure that we're getting the records. I know as a principal, a lot of times the registrar, my registrar, would be the one who would initiate or receive the T-Rex request. And typically on the 9th day, if my registrar had not responded to a request as a principal, I got an email saying that, hey, an email was sent to your school and the records have not been sent yet. And I would usually just go next door and talk to my registrar and follow up to make sure that we were sending records and that we were complying with those requests to get the records. But it's important too, because the dates for withdrawal and in one school and enrollment in another need to match up. And so Pam Brown, you're asking a question about why it's important about the retroactive withdrawal. So one of the reasons that's important is because the dates have to match up in our PEIM system, or what's becoming what we're calling TSDS. And so if a student enrolls or withdraws from a school, and then maybe it takes a couple of days to get them enrolled in the other. Once they enroll in the other school, the previous school can make the withdrawal retroactive to the date when the other school has requested the records. And so sometimes it takes a little while to get that all meshed out. But the most important thing here is getting those records, making sure you have them. If they're coming from a different state, we don't want any delays. And so please have someone reach out to that previous school. If the student can remember previous school, or whoever's coming in with them can remember the name of the previous school, please pick up the phone, reach out to them, and let's make sure we're doing all we can to get the students enrolled as quickly as possible so that they don't experience more gaps or deal with more adverse effects of mobility. And that's kind of what we're talking about with this. This is about easing the adverse effects of mobility for our McKinney-Vento and foster care students. Turn it back over to Ms. Kravitz.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Bowser. I'm seeing a couple different questions in the chat. I'm going to answer what I can right now live, and then we're going to go ahead and continue on with the presentation, and we'll work to get you answers to your questions. So I'm seeing some questions regarding the feeder pattern, and if you need to do enrollment conference, if the student is in the same feeder pattern. That's an interesting question, and I would say yes. It is a new school, and that student is, when they're newly enrolling, that would be a really excellent opportunity for an enrollment conference, and making sure that everybody's on the same page to support that student. I'm seeing some issues with charter schools in the T-Rex record. I'm going to need to get more information on that and get back with you, Cheryl. Please go ahead and send an email with your email, Cheryl, to us so that we can respond to that and get back to you. And Jamie, you're asking about where can I find that in writing? Definitely citing the law that is referenced would be something that I would suggest. I can go back here. TEC 31.104D and TEC 25.002. And then we do have this in our foster care resource guide in writing. And so we can follow up with Dr. Watson and get you that page number where that information lives so that you can share that. In the instances where a student later becomes homeless, does the enrollment conference then need to occur later in the year? Since that student is actually already at the school, they wouldn't be newly enrolled at that time, but that would be in one of those scenarios where it would be a best practice to check in with the student. The intent of the enrollment conference is that everybody's working on the same page, supporting that student. And so doing that as a due diligence and following up, but it is not required per what the policy is, which is for newly enrolled students. Okay, so I know that there's other questions in the chat. Please do email us. We have our contact information towards the end of this presentation. We do want to answer your questions, and I love some of these nuances with TREX and things. We will get back to you with that information. And for the sake of time, we're going to keep it moving. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jordan Brown for our next section.
Awesome. So in this section, we will be reviewing TAC 89.1605. And that is the section that covers the required activities for LEAs when easing transitions for newly enrolled students. So there are 4 main components of this section, and we're going to go over each of these in detail. So this is just kind of an outline of what we'll be going over in this section. So 89.1605A is developing systems to ease the transition of a student who is homeless or in substitute care during the first 2 weeks of enrollment at a new school. And this includes 3 things: providing them welcome packets, providing them new student introductions, and providing them nutrition benefits. So we'll cover each of these 3 things under subsection A in detail. The next thing is providing students that enrollment conference that Kelly discussed earlier, providing professional development opportunities and resources for your staff, and using the TREX application to facilitate records and transfers and communication between the sending and receiving school. We have the PID and the PET systems crossed out, and that'll be discussed a little bit later. But for now, use of TREX is what we're going to be talking about today. So, as I said, we're going to look in depth at 89.1605A. So that is the requirement for school districts and open enrollment charter schools to provide welcome packets, school introductions, and nutrition benefits. So let's go ahead and jump into the information about welcome packets. So this is A1. So each welcome packet, what a welcome packet is really a packet of information that you provide to that newly enrolled student, and it provides that student and their family information about the school, information about activities in the school, and resources that are available to them. And this can be specific to them if they are a student who is in foster care or a student who is McKinney-Vento eligible. They can be formatted to fit their needs. But they're really there to help assist students and families with becoming familiar with the school. So this is a really great first step to providing information to your newly enrolled students. So under the rule, there are certain items that are required to be included in your welcome packet. So we have the list here, and this is also going to be made available in our TAC toolkit. The formatting is almost exactly the same. So hopefully there's a little bit of, I kind of have a photographic memory, so this definitely helps me out. So let's go over the required items here. So the first thing is providing extracurricular activities, information about fine arts, athletics, any other extracurriculars that you have, that needs to be included in your welcome packet. You're also required to have student club activities, information on fee waivers, tutoring opportunities for the student. You also must include the student code of conduct, additional student supports, and contact information for key school staff. So what is a key school staff member? That's also outlined in the rule. So you can see here on the right-hand side, the contact information for key school staff members includes school counselors, nurses, social workers, the foster care and McKinney-Vento liaison, your principal or assistant principal, your registrars, your nutrition coordinators, your transportation specialists, and any additional support staff. So people who oversee the special education program, your emergent bilingual contact, your gifted and talented contacts, 504, and pregnancy-related services. So all of those should be included as well. So these are the baseline requirements that are included in the rule. You need to have these in your welcome packets. And we also have additional best practices and considerations for students who are in foster care or who are McKinney-Vento eligible. So on the next slide here, we have a list of all of the best practices. So these are not requirements, but definitely consider including these in your welcome packet. Things like student clubs, after-school programs, enrichment programs, mentor programs for the students. That's especially important for our foster care McKinney-Vento students. Family engagement opportunities, so providing a list of what's happening in the school year for your parents and your families so that they know when they can get involved in their students' education. We know that's so important. Student ambassador programs, that's another thing that can really help students become familiar with the school, meet new friends. Dr. Bowser is actually going to talk a little bit more about those later on in the presentation. Also, we recommend including post-secondary planning activities. Summer and holiday resources are another good one for students who are in foster care or McKinney-Vento eligible. Obviously, having resources available for those times when they're out of school is definitely important given that stability. And then other community resources available in your area. So your school counselors, your foster care liaisons, and your McKinney-Vento liaisons may be the people that really know where, what community resources are available. But if you're like, I don't know where to start here, who should I contact? We do recommend a website. It's called findhelp.org, and it is a really awesome nonprofit. They have, it's just a website where you enter your zip code and it shows you all of the available community-based organizations that provide community resources to people in the area. So that is a great starting point for you to find those community resources and list those out. Okay, so these are all of our best practices and requirements for the welcome packet for your students. We want to review some of the changes that happened here in this subsection. So you might have noticed, if you were an expert on this subsection, you might have noticed that we added available student supports to the required contents of the welcome packet. And we also added new or additional key school staff members. So we added principals, we added registrars, those designated liaisons, nutrition coordinators, and transportation specialists. So those are all additions. So if you need to go back and revise your welcome packets, please do that. Please add these particular items into those welcome packets. Okay, so to close out here, we wanted to provide a little bit of information and some key reminders. So like I said, here is the one pager within the toolkit for this subsection about welcome packets. And again, it looks almost exactly the same from the slide. This has been updated and we will be posting this to our website. It's not currently available in the updated format, but it will be very soon. So that is available to you there. And we wanted to provide a couple of reminders. So the rule requires you to provide welcome packets to students who are in foster care or who are McKinney-Vento eligible. So you may already be doing this. This may be something that you have an existing process for. So if so, you can definitely utilize that process and just make sure that you're providing the required information to students in foster care or students experiencing homelessness. That's really the key aspect of this subsection. One important thing to note is that welcome packets must be provided within the first 2 weeks of enrollment. So this is specific to those first 2 weeks, not to be confused with the enrollment conference, which can be provided within the first 2 weeks or as soon as feasible. Welcome packets must be provided in the first 2 weeks. Again, you can utilize existing processes for this. And make sure that your packets have the required items that are in the rule. So if you are utilizing an existing process, if you can go back, review that information, see if you have anything missing, and make sure to add that, and definitely add those best practices, right? Adding that information for students in foster care and McKinney-Vento is so important for them to have that information on hand as soon as possible. And include any additional information for your LEA. So obviously, like, add anything that's important and relevant for your school district. It doesn't have to be limited to this list of items. You can definitely go above and beyond and add more information that's helpful for your students. Okay, that is everything about the welcome packets. Do we have any questions? Okay, I see one question. Are the welcome packets for all students or McKinney-Vento students only? So under this rule covers students who are in foster care, substitute care, or students who are McKinney-Vento eligible. So under the rule, you are required to provide them to those students, but we do recommend providing this type of information to all students. It's definitely a best practice. If we are not providing welcome packets yet, do we start now or in the upcoming school year? And that's a good question. I'm not sure what the effective date of this rule was. Kelly, if you have the answer to that question, that would be helpful.
Yeah, so you need to be doing it. If you're not doing it, go ahead and get a process in place and get it implemented. Welcome packets have been the expectation since March 30th of 2020. So it's an opportunity for you to go ahead and get it implemented, plan what you would like to put in it, get it going this spring, and then launch it strong in the fall.
I got a couple of questions about the link to the resource. So again, we are the newest resource with all of the updated changes is not currently on the website. We will be updating that, but we will also have the link to the current resource at the end of the presentation, so that will be made available to you. And if you know where our Highly Mobile and At-Risk website is, you can go there and it's located under Tools and Resources. There's a button at the bottom of the page.
And I would say too that our tools just have been updated with the minor updates to align it with the policy, but they're excellent resources to start using today. So go ahead and reference it. And then as we mentioned, we'll have our new toolkit posted very soon. But for those that are maybe haven't started with their welcome packets yet or looking at it, go ahead and pull what we have and start utilizing it. And then we'll have the new resources posted shortly.
I see an interesting question quite a few times about providing the welcome packet electronically. Is that something that is allowable?
Yeah, we don't tell you how to do it. So it's just really the expectation that you have a welcome packet, and there's a lot of different ways that that could look. So it's definitely up for you to decide locally how you decide to do your welcome packet. We do want to make sure that it is student friendly and achieving the goal of what the welcome packet is. So that is one thing with your electronic links. to me, it would just be a word of caution of making sure your families have internet access. Isn't it easy to navigate? And is it welcoming? If it is a virtual packet that folks are looking at, how does that work? And is it meeting the goal of what the welcome packet is? And so just making sure in anything that you're implementing that it is achieving and in doing the goal of what is intended, which is that students would feel welcome, people would feel supported, people would know where to go for information, and they have that warm, welcome, friendly environment to the campus. And so, but with that, you all have a lot of flexibility regarding how it looks.
Another question about what documentation must be provided to show proof that the welcome packet was provided. TEA will not be reviewing documentation about these processes, but that might be a local process that you have in place. So currently there's no requirement for documentation on this process.
Yeah, so we just encourage you to put in place a local process for that to ensure that a welcome packet is provided, student introductions are provided. But as Jordan mentioned, how that looks is up for you to decide locally of how you want to manage and track that.
I got clarification on one of our questions about the resource website. So that was in reference to findhelp.org. So that is the website that we discussed about finding community resources available in your area.
Also, I see that Dr. Watson wants to provide some additional information about the welcome packets, whether they're hard copy or electronic. So would you like to weigh in on that, Dr. Watson?
For your welcome packets, they can be either or. That is a local district policy. So however you are providing, because some districts are enrolling online. So if you would like to provide your welcome packet online, that is a district choice. So if you feel like it is beneficial for your parents to have it online, but you should always be a good practice to have a hard copy also. So that would be your district policy.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Watson. And some folks are asking about the enrollment conference, the checklist. So definitely these tools, all of them, and we're going to be going over them with you in the presentation, are really outline what the expectations are. And you can very much use them as a checklist, making sure that you have the different components that are included on the tool. So we hope that we find it beneficial. Great. I think we need to go ahead and need to keep moving to the next section just for the sake of time. Thanks, y'all, for your questions. And like I said, email us if we didn't get to you, and we would love to answer your question offline.
Okay, let's turn it over to Dr. Bowser.
Sorry about that. I was trying to figure out how to come off Zoom there, come off there. All right, so today, for this part of the presentation, we're going to get into, we're about at the halfway mark, so we're going to get into school introductions to ease transitions. Now, for this part of the rule, it remained unchanged from the previous rule, and we'll get you a link after this email. We'll send you a link to the rule itself. It was in the QR code earlier on slide 8, but the actual rule itself, this part didn't actually change, but we did want to provide some context to this part. The school introductions are welcoming activities that are provided by the school to new students. Staff can take this opportunity to introduce students to the school in a variety of ways, such as giving tours of the campus, hosting welcome events, providing one-on-one student support. And these activities can help the students acclimate to their new environments, adjust academically, meet new friends, and participate in encourage their participation in extracurricular activities. Now, while LEAs are required to provide introductions to students who are homeless or in foster care, these supports can be considered and should be considered best practice for easing the transition for all newly enrolled students. Again, it's required for foster care and McKinney-Vento kiddos, but consider this a best practice for really all new enrollees. Next slide. All right, so here we're going to talk a little bit again about those strategies to ease transition We talked about providing introductions. As a principal, always, we had kind of a list of people that we considered sort of VIPs that were on campus. That included, the campus administrators, the campus counselors, the nurse, the registrar, the attendance clerk, the nutrition coordinator or the cafeteria manager, however you want to refer to them. We're going to talk about that in depth a little bit because that's now a requirement to include the nutrition coordinator in these conversations. But it's great practice to go ahead and introduce them to those VIPs, the librarian, any of those people that they're going to need to go to possibly on their own. Go ahead and make that as part of their tour. It's good to implement mentoring programs in which your staff and students, in which your staff or your community members can facilitate those introductions, assigning lunch buddies. That's always great. And then checking in with the student throughout the day. One things we always did while you're doing cafeteria duty, if you're going to be in there, there's a new student, check in with them, make sure they're not sitting alone. One things that we talked about with our kids, again, as just part of our school culture was, hey, never let anyone sit alone. If you see somebody sitting alone, go over and invite them to come over to your table. Going to a new school can be a very scary experience for kids. And so these things can help ease the transition and alleviate some of the fears and the anxiety that can come with being the new kid in school. And then another great practice that we recommend is to designate a staff member to whom the student can reach out for support and services. This person can serve as a safe space for the student to share any concerns, needs, or life changes. And one of the things we found is that sometimes students will not tell the school about that they are experiencing homelessness. Sometimes they'll tell a friend, and then the friend will tell a teacher. It's great and we'll talk about PD here later in the presentation, but it's always great to train your staff that if they hear this information, to please make sure they get that information to someone who can take the appropriate actions to then get that student the benefits that go along with whether they're experiencing homelessness or they're in foster care. It's great to make sure we have those lanes of communication open. But again, those key contact members, campus staff members who've been designated student mentors, your community mentor sponsor, a student-led group, if you have student ambassadors, we're going to talk a little bit about that on the next slide, and faculty sponsors. So, no, but one thing we did want to stress before we go too far again is emphasizing that confidentiality. So say, for instance, when you're walk the student down and they're doing the tours, be sure that we're not that we're keeping confidentiality in mind as we're introducing them to other people. It's unnecessarily to say, hey, this is Johnny, he came to us in foster care, the CPS took him out of his house last night, and so now he's in foster care. Those kind of things aren't really necessary, or they're unnecessary at all, and they actually violate federal laws. So be sure you're following the spirit of FERPA as you're touring kids around the building. I want to talk a little bit here about student ambassadors. Now, your student ambassadors are the students that will represent your school and introduce students to the campus and its culture. The student ambassadors are familiar with the campus environment and have a positive attitude, great communication skills, leadership qualities, and are accepting of others. Your student ambassadors can organize or participate in a variety of activities, hosting a newcomer social event throughout the year. And as a middle school principal, we always had a middle school mixer for sixth graders that were new to middle school. We would do that throughout the day in the last period of the day, and that helped them really to kind of notice each other and see each other and become acclimated to the building, being a new sixth grader. Sometimes getting ninth graders to do that is somewhat impossible. Tours of the campus library, we talked about those important places again, the counseling office, the gym. Where's the cafeteria? Showing the student how to put money on their account, introducing them to the new nutrition coordinator so that they know when that student comes in that day, and if they're eligible for benefits, that they're not charged that day. That's one of the main things we want to make sure we get across in this section, is to have a process in place where an adult from the office communicates with the nutrition coordinator to let them know this student is new and that they're eligible for benefits, and that they get those benefits as quickly as possible, so there's no delay whatsoever in getting food that day. I often gave the new student a copy of my card with my name on the back, and I just had a conversation with the cafeteria. Says, hey, if you see a student with this, they come through the line with this. This is a student that's eligible for for what we call free lunch or reduced lunch, and to please make sure that they're not charged on the first day coming through. And if the student's eligible for SNAP benefits, there's actually a process requiring that this process be expedited if they're eligible for a SNAP. All right, next slide. Again, here is our there's a one pager that's a part of our toolkit. As you can look, as you can see from the image on the left, it kind of follows the slides we just went over. So again, a lot of you are asking for copies of this presentation. A lot of what you're seeing here is on the one pagers or in the toolkit that we've been talking about. And so if you download the toolkit, then you'll see much of what's in this presentation. But again, just a reminder, those school introductions are welcoming activities provided by the school to the new students. These activities can include giving tours of the campus, hosting welcome events, and providing one-on-one support. And these activities, most importantly, they help acclimate new students to the new environment, meet new friends, and participate in extracurriculars. A great practice that we had was when a student enrolled, we knew that lunch was after second period. If we knew their lunch was after second period, then we would invite their lunch, someone from their second period to be their lunch buddy. If their lunch was during third period, same thing. We would look at the roster and find a person that we knew was going to be a good role model for them, or maybe somebody that could help them out. And we would, invite that person down and say, hey, can you make sure this person, when you go to lunch today, that you walk this person through lunch line, make sure they're taken care of in lunch today. So assigning the lunch buddy from the class period in which they're going to be going to lunch is just a great practice. All right, next slide. All right, so we'll pause here before we go into our next section for any comments or questions, and I'll check the Q&A over here just to see if there's anything. Let's see. Mouse is going crazy here. All right, let's see. Slide apply to. Okay, these are mostly from the previous presentation. So I will move on to the next section. And then this next section, we've talked a little bit about this, but this section is about nutrition benefits. And as far as the rule is concerned, this part of the rule was not changed, but we'll go over it anyway, just to kind of remind everyone about the nutrition benefits information. All students who are identified as homeless or in foster care are eligible for the USDA Child Nutrition Program, or again, what we just kind of colloquially refer to as free reduced lunch. LEAs must ensure that there's an expedited process in place for all students who qualify for nutrition benefits upon enrollment. Again, an adult from the office needs to make their way down to the nutrition coordinator, have that conversation with them to make sure that this process is expedited. Or if there's a form your campus wants to create, and you hand that form to the nutrition coordinator, just make sure there's a process in place to expedite, making sure the students there's no delay in them getting their nutrition benefits. And the process must expedite communication with the LEA nutrition coordinator to ensure that students eligible are not charged in error or experiencing delays. And we talked about that just a minute ago. And again, if they're eligible for SNAP, please ensure that that process is expedited as well. Here, this is the next part of the rule, is that school districts and open enrollment charter schools shall develop systems to ease transitions of a student who is homeless or in substitute care during the first 2 weeks of enrollment at a new school. These systems shall include the following. Again, I'm using the word shall. That means that yes, you must do this. Mechanisms to ensure that the process is in place for all students to qualify for nutrition benefits upon enrollment, as all students who are homeless and substitute care are eligible for the USDA Child Nutrition Program. And be sure and train your staff on that as well, so they know that if they hear this from the student or hear from someone else that a student's experiencing homelessness, please have your staff make sure they contact counselor, registrar, principal, someone who can help get this part expedited and get the student the benefits that they are entitled to. The process must expedite communication with the district or charter school nutrition coordinator to ensure that eligible students are not charged in error or, again, experiencing those delays. All right, and just as a reminder, appropriate LEAs campus staff should immediately notify food services when a student enrolls. And I'm stressing that because that's one of the most important pieces. Be sure that there's a process in place at your local LEA If you are the campus foster care champion or the campus McKinney-Vento champion, you should be in contact with your campus administration, your campus leadership, to make sure that there's a process in place, and that you guys have talked about this and what that looks like. Verifying the student coding is in alignment with the effective date. This is about making sure that the date is right in PEIMS, TSDS, PEIMS. If that's your registrar who has done the coding or a counselor's done the coding, someone there needs to make sure that they have put in the coding. And we talked about coding in our last webinar, but make sure the coding is there, it's accurate, and that the date is correct, the date for which the student qualified for the benefits is correct. Again, want to stress that student confidentiality, that's paramount. Collaborate with your nutrition coordinator to establish those processes, such as sending an approval notification via email. Just any of those things. Again, want to facilitate that communication with the nutrition coordinator. And LEAs, and I kind of mentioned this, and this is more than just best practice, LEAs should provide annual training to new and returning staff on nutrition eligibility and application processes. All right, and here is our toolkit, again, a part of our toolkit, and we'll get you that website here in a few minutes. We'll also send it out in the email that's going to follow this presentation, but this is a third page in the toolkit. Again, follows the flow of what we just talked about. All students who are identified as homeless or in foster care are eligible for nutrition benefits. The LEAs must ensure there's an expedited process in place for all students who qualify for nutrition benefits under 89.1605. And communication with the nutrition coordinator is essential to ensuring eligible students receive benefits in a timely manner. All right, good. The link is there in the Q&A. If you want to look at the Q&A, it looks like Edwina Trevino. Thank you, Edwina. We appreciate you doing that for us and getting that in there. All right, and for the sake of time, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Watson.
Okay, everyone. I hope you have been catching up on all of this great information that we're providing you. So now we're into the enrollment conference. The Texas Administrative Code 89.1 1605B. So we're still in 1605. Now we're heading to the B section. School districts and open enrollment charter schools shall convene an enrollment conference within the first 2 weeks or as soon as feasible after a student who is homeless or in substitute care enrolls at a new school. So just wanted you to look at that wording, just a reminder, as we've been doing through this presentation, any information that is underlined, italicized, and bold, that is the new wording for this rule. So the students' participation in the meeting should be addressed on a case-by-case basis. Remember, convening cannot delay or impede enrollment. So just because you have not had the enrollment conference, that does not impede enrollment. The student must immediately be enrolled if they're McKinney-Vento eligible, and also students in foster care. So the enrollment conference may be used in conjunction with an existing meeting that is designed for a similar purpose for newly enrolled students. So this is not something you can just hold differently. If you're already having a meeting, or let's just say you have a special education student enrolling and you're having emergency art, have the enrollment conference at the same time. You do not have to do anything separately or different for this enrollment conference. If you're meeting with the guardian, have the enrollment conference. Make sure you discuss what needs to be discussed in the enrollment conference. Also, going back to students' participation, if you're discussing matters that are age appropriate, make sure you do not have to include the child if the information is not age appropriate. So it is up to you to address that case by case. Now, the enrollment conference, key people to consider including. These are key people who should be there during this enrollment conference. You have your school administrators, your foster care liaisons, McKinney-Ventile liaisons, and your school counselor. These are key people that should be within the enrollment conference because of the information that will be conveyed. Also, others to include in that enrollment conference, you have your special program staff. So if the student happens to be either in special education, if they're emerging bilingual, gifted or talented, or any of those special programs, that staff should be included in the enrollment conference. Also, teachers, social workers, dropout prevention specialists, attendance truancy officers, if that is a need, should be included in that enrollment conference to have those discussions. The community support, parent or guardian or relative or foster placement, they should be included. Caregivers, Texas DFPS caseworkers, the Texas DFPS educational decision maker, and the CASA volunteers. If they are in the students' lives, they should be included in the enrollment conference because you are talking about the student. You want to make sure the student is welcome on your campus and they know all the information that will lead them to be successful on your campuses. Next, an enrollment conference is a student-centered meeting for newly enrolled students. Remember, this is student-centered. We're talking about student information in these enrollment conferences. Identify those academic and extracurricular interests. So find out what the student is interested in and make sure you're able to have those discussions of what the school and the district can offer that student. Introduce school processes and opportunities for engagement. Review those credits and assessment information. So if you have that information, review that during that conference so everyone has that understanding. Determine any social emotional supports that is needed and develop a course in instructional strategies and communicate confidential information that impacts the student's success if it is needed. So we want to make sure you are discussing things that will help the student be academically, extracurriculars, any social emotional needs, especially if they're high schools, you should be discussing those credits and any assessments they have taken previously, and you can have those discussions within that enrollment conference. Also, key discussion topics that any suggestions for you for key discussion topics, the students' interests, strengths, previous success. So talk about what they previously done and those successes they had at the previous school. And you can discuss how they can continue to have those successes on your campus. The students' attendance, their grades, credits, any social emotional behavior supports, the LEA policies to support enrollment and withdrawal processes. So you can have these discussions early, especially in the enrollment conference. The communication preference of the parent, guardian, or the unaccompanied youth. How would they like to be communicated to when topics on the campus arise? You can have that discussion during the enrollment conference also. Any post-secondary readiness. That is a great discussion to have to let them know, let the student know how you can support them in their post-secondary ideas. And remember, discussion topics are required for the Texas Administrative Code 89.1605B2 and should be adapted to meet the unique needs of the student. So just to summarize the changes in this area, we added or as soon as feasible. We heard the responses from all the districts stating that sometimes it is hard to have it within that 2-week time frame. So we added the or as soon as feasible. And we wanted to clarify that the conference is for when students are newly enrolled. So also added that a student's participation in the meeting should be addressed on a case-by-case basis. And then we made minor tweaks to the enrollment conference participation list. So want to show you the enrollment conference toolkit. So this has been on our website for the longest, but we will be updating it with the new rule language. So on that website that we have, the Highly Mobile and At-Risk website, at the bottom, it has toolkits and resources. This information has been on our website. So we wanted to make sure on the toolkit, we provided you the rule language. We provided you information. We provided you suggestions and any key topics. All the material that we just went over is on this specific toolkit. So the LEAs must convene that enrollment conference with the student who is homeless or in substitute care within the first 2 weeks or as soon as feasible. And then that enrollment conference can be used in conjunction with an existing meeting that is designed for a similar purpose for newly enrolled students. So we just want to highlight that for you as regards to our enrollment conference. So I know we have some questions and they're answering some of your questions in the chat, in the Q&A. So thank you for asking those questions. So if you have any specific questions, please reach out to us. We would love to answer those specific questions you have.
Hey, Dr. Watson, the one question that we're kind of seeing a theme of in the Q&A right now is about students who become homeless or in the middle of the year. Can you talk a little bit about that and whether or not they still need to conduct the conference and if they still need to give them the welcome packet? That's kind of a theme we're seeing.
We want to remember the wording of the rule. The rule says to conduct in newly enrolled students. So if they are changing programs, you can have that enrollment conference to discuss what is currently happening with that student. You can also, remember, have the key personnel in the room. So the question, why did they certainly become homeless? Having the counselor in there talking with them. You can have those enrollment conference in conjunction with other meetings to support that student. So just remember, it's just, don't look at it as if we're having something else new for this student. Look at it as you're providing supports for the student and you're having meetings to provide supports for the student.
And just wanted to kind of jump in addition to what Dr. Watson shared. In instances, though, when it is later in the year, let's say the student is technically already enrolled in the school. And so that's where following up with the student, having a meeting is a good idea, but is not required. So truly the enrollment conference is for the newly enrolled student, although it is a best practice for a student who it's found that they're in foster care or that they're homeless much later in the year, to follow up with them to make sure that they have the services, the supports, the needs, that folks are working together in a proactive manner. But at that time, the student has already been enrolled in the school, and so they are not newly enrolled to the school. And so that is one distinction there. It's going to land more in a best practice to implement it, but not a requirement for the rule when it's later in the school and the student has already been enrolled in that school.
Thank you. So we will keep on going. So now let's go into the Texas Administrative Code 89.1/1605C. We're heading through 1605. So LEAs must provide professional development opportunities and resources to support key staff members such as principals, registrars, counselors, designated liaisons, nutrition coordinators, and transportation specialists on local processes and procedures to facilitate successful school transitions for students who are homeless or in substitute care. So what professional development information are you providing to your district? Remember, all districts need to know this information, especially about this rule and especially about the different programs, your McKinney-Vento eligible student programs, and also your students in foster care programs. So what information are you providing to your districts for professional development? And this is key information that should be known to everyone who is working with students who are McKinney-Vento eligible and foster care, and in foster care. Next, we want to broaden the professional development training requirements to include opportunities and resources. So we wanted to adjust those, make sure we let LEAs have more flexibility on the types of trainings and the related resources they develop to meet the unique needs of the groups on your campuses. So you have that flexibility to provide any types of trainings you feel will support your districts in understanding any information regarding students who are homeless or in substitute care. And then we also want to change permanent staff to change it to key staff. So those key staff members who should be a part and who should know what is going on and could be that go-to person for any of these programs. So we wanted to make sure that all of those personnel should know what's going on and how to assist students who are homeless or in foster care. So some reminders: provide professional development within your district. That's number one. Make sure at the beginning of the year, you are providing an overview of what the programs are about and what your district does to support those students. Make sure you provide updates within the year. So coming back in January, having a foster care McKinney-Vento eligible student update to provide clear information to your campuses. And also at the end of the year, provide those end of the year reminders of closing out, and then also prepare for the upcoming school year. So remember, all professional development is up to your district of how you would like to have that, but these are key reminders to help you within your year to provide that professional development. And also, key staff members should be trained on McKinney-Vento and foster care processes and procedures for the district. Everyone in the district should know and understand what is the district processes for assisting McKinney-Vento eligible students and also students in foster care. So in question, I see a question. Your district has a welcome packet for McKinney-Vento students. Can we add foster care information and have one packet, or do we need to develop one for each? That is a district decision. If you already have a packet for McKinney-Vento students and you want to include foster care, because this rule does have both in them, that would be more beneficial for your district, if it is beneficial for your district. So adding that foster care information in there and having one packet may be beneficial for you. So thank you for having that. Good question. And I also, let's see. And I think that's it. We'll move on to the next session because we want to make sure we be careful of your time. So the last 89.1605D, this is the last one for 89.1605. School districts and open enrollment charter schools must use the Texas Records Exchange, TREX we call it, to facilitate records transfer and expedite coordination and communication between the sending and the receiving school. So remember, you have that TREX information is used to facilitate the records transfer. Also, the identification database or the personal enrollment tracking application is no longer being used by TEA. So that's why you do see a line through those. So we are not using those processes at this time, but make sure you are utilizing the TREX system. And then in cases where records from the student's previous school are missing or cannot be located, school districts and open enrollment charter schools should use the Texas School Data System, TSDS, unique ID application to identify where the student was previously enrolled. So we want to make sure we let you know that this is new wording for the rule, that you can utilize the Texas Student Data System, TSDS, unique ID application to identify where the student was previously enrolled. So sometimes students enrolled with very little information, especially if the student was coming from a previous school and just had temporary placement. So in these instances, placing the student appropriately and connecting them to the appropriate coursework and supports may be difficult. So that's why we encourage your districts to use the TSDS system, unique enrollment tracking module, to locate information on a student's school enrollment history. So we want to ensure that you are looking at these systems in place to assist your district in finding that information for the student. So this can be helpful for understanding the student's school history, any gaps in enrollment, and gathering information for those schools to address the student's current academic and social needs beyond what have been provided by the sending school. So we want to ensure that you are able to obtain that information from the sending school. So school leaders are encouraged to work with the appropriate personnel who has access to the TSDS unique ID in these instances. And additionally, school personnel such as the McKinney-Vento or foster care liaison, if permitted by your LEA, TIL approval, may acquire access to the system to help with understanding a student's prior enrollment history and acquiring information to help with serving the student. So this can be done by requesting TIL access to the TSDS unique ID. And some changes for this section is we provided updated information to the rule related to the Texas Student Data System, TSDS, unique ID application. And now this system can be used to support mobile students, and then direct districts to use Texas Student Data System, unique ID, to help with locating a student's previous school history, identifying those gaps, and also locating previous school information and other information that you may need. And then also we want to remind school leaders, this application is available to assist with mitigating barriers to school transitions and gathering previous school information. So any questions regarding the student information? So I don't see any. Do you see anything?
Not seeing anything.
Okay, let's move on. We have another section to go to. Now we're heading in 89.1615, provisions of special education services. So remember, this rule is regarding to mitigate those transitions for our students who are McKinney-Vento eligible and our students in substitute care. So for special education evaluations, this is the rule language for this information. When a student who is homeless or in substitute care transfers into a new school district or an open enrollment charter school after being referred by a previous district or charter school for a special education evaluation, the receiving district or charter school must accept the referral and ensure that any written report of a full and individual initial evaluation is completed in accordance with the timelines that are already established by section 89.1011. So we want to make sure if the student at the previous school had the testing evaluation has already been initiated, the receiving school must accept that written report of the full and individual initial evaluation. So now let's talk about those transfer requirements for special education. So when a student who is homeless or in substitute care is eligible for special education and transfers into a new school district or open enrollment charter school during the school year, the receiving district or charter school must ensure that it meets the student's transfer requirements, as in section 89.105J, as it relates to the admission review and dismissal committee, the ARD committee. So we want to make sure that it is clear for those special education transfer requirements that their information is transferred to the new school district. So some reminders about special education. So ask any special education evaluations that were done in the process. Are they still in the process or have they been done? This information could be held as part of the enrollment conference. So make sure you're discussing if the student was receiving any academic or behavior interventions also. So this is good information to have during the enrollment conference. Also, if a student was referred to the new district, must coordinate with the previous district to promptly complete the evaluation. So if they were in the middle of the evaluation, you want to make sure that information is passed to the new school so they can promptly complete that evaluation. Obtaining the referral paperwork and any pieces of the evaluation that were completed is very crucial. And then lastly, due to the student's mobility and possible changes to whom the child is living with, the person who signs the consent for the evaluation may not be the person who is currently enrolling and working with the student. So this can make paperwork and information more challenging to obtain. So remember, especially when students who are in substitute care are enrolling, the person who has the educational decision maker rights for that student can currently sign for that student. So this is information that needs to be looked at and paid attention to once you are looking at those special education requirements for our students. So we wanted to provide you with our special education resources, especially for those who have more in-depth questions about special education. So we provided you with the TEA Special Education website and also the very helpful Special Education Information Center. They provide very detailed information for you, and they also have a contact that you may ask more detailed questions regarding special education. So we go through, do we have any questions at this time?
There are a couple of questions regarding the timelines of the evaluation in special ed. And we can either follow up afterwards with those folks or answer live, whatever you prefer.
There are exceptions to that rule, and in the foster care and student success guide in chapter 11 was dedicated all to students in foster care who are receiving special education services, and it is covered in detail in that chapter 11, which is the video and the recording are currently updated on our website. So you can go to our foster care, TEA foster care website and view students in foster care chapter 11. So it is more detailed information regarding those timelines. There are exceptions to the timeline, so make sure you are looking at the law regarding that. And we will move right along. We're almost complete with this training. Thank you for hanging in there with us. So next, notice to students, educational decision maker and caseworker. This is 89.1617. So we're heading into the education decision maker. So we want to make you aware that notice to students, educational decision maker and caseworker is only for foster care. It is only for students in substitute care. So school districts and open enrollment charter schools must comply with the Texas Education Code, section 25.007B10, and provide notice in writing to the education decision maker and caseworker of a student who is in substitute care regarding events that may significantly impact the student's education, the education of the student. So you must reach out to the education decision maker and caseworker for the student if any significant impact to the education. So we wanted to provide you with significant events based upon the Texas Education Code 25.007B10. So a significant event is the Admission Review and Dismissal Committee, the R Committee. You must reach out to the education decision maker. Any manifestation determination reviews, you must reach out. The appointment of a surrogate parent for the child. Any disciplinary actions for which parent notice is required. And then building that personal graduation plan and credit recovery plan. You must talk with that educational decision maker. And then the endorsements decision, you must have a signature for that. So you must reach out to them. And then school events that will impact students' education decisions. So make sure you are reaching out to those educational decision makers for the students, and especially in foster care. Now, we wanted to provide you with the form that tells you who the educational decision maker is. So when a student comes to enroll, a student in foster care comes to enroll in your school, they will provide you with the 2085, which is the placement paperwork, and they will also provide you with the 25E, which is the educational decision maker. So this is the person who the Texas has legally given permission to make educational decisions on behalf of the student. So this is a 4-page paperwork. So make sure you are able to understand the page number 1 we're showing you here, and also the last page, page 4. Make sure you have signatures on this page and you know who to contact and for any educational decisions for the student. So this is the actual paperwork where you will get who the educational decision maker is for the student. So reminder, so provide notice in writing to the guardian, educational decision maker regarding any events that may impact the student's education. Also, we want to ensure that you have the appropriate information to reach out to the education decision maker. For example, best contact phone number or electronic mail address. So how would the education decision maker like to be contacted? So make sure you get that information. And then also build a system of communication for the student to ensure that all staff understand when and to whom communication happens. So we want to remind you about making sure you have those communication skills and strategies for the students. So any questions for this area?
And Latrenda, I'm going to say because of time, we're just at the very end. So I'm going to go ahead and if anybody has any questions on this, please email fostercareliaison@tea.texas.gov, and we'll make sure to answer any of your questions about the education decision maker form and the requirement for students in foster care. So just today in our last minute, we have some reflection for you. I'd like for you to identify one key action step as a result of today's presentation. Would like you to think through who is at least one person that you can share something with that you learned today. We would like you to download the Transition Assistance Toolkit. It is available online, and we will have our updated toolkit posted hopefully by the end of this week. So be on the lookout for that. The tools are very beneficial, lots of great information there. And then we'd love for you to invite a colleague to join us for part 2. We had over 700 people on here live at one point today. We had over 1,200 people registered. Please invite folks. We want you here and want others to be able getting this information. Thank you to everybody who prioritized this. Of all the things that you could be doing with your time on a Wednesday morning, that you chose to be here with us means a lot to us and to this work and to our kids across the state and our families. And so we want to say thank you. I know there was a lot presented on today, a lot shared, and we trust that this will give you something to go back to as you're working to implement this. As questions come up, as you continue to chew and iterate on the information, please reach out to us. We are here for you and want to support you with clarity and the information that you need as you work to implement. As a reminder, our part 2 will be on April 5th, so we look forward to seeing you. And then we would love for you to fill out a survey concerning this presentation today and give us some feedback as well as what information would be most helpful to you. So if you can please scan this QR code and provide us that feedback We want to make sure that this training is relevant, applicable, helpful to you. If there's any tools or information that would also be helpful as you work to implement, please let us know. And again, we're available to serve you. So thank you all for your time today. This concludes our presentation. We look forward to seeing you on April 5th for part 2. Take care, everybody.